Hi everyone, we're back again with Virginia Civics and Economics Chapter 5, Section 2. You have the following textbook, you can follow along with it. So the SOL standards discussed are analyze political cartoons and political advertisements, select and defend positions in writing, and explain the fundamental principles of consent of the governed. And we're going to focus more on that last point today. So the vocabulary here are ratified, federalists, and anti-federalists. And I need to take a moment before we continue to just set the scene for you guys. Last movie, we talked a little bit about the process for creating the Constitution, what was compromised, what was debated, etc. Now we're going into this next phase of the story, which was what happened when the Constitution was finally written and given to the states, and the people of the states had to say, we agree to it or not. So ratified is basically agreement. When a state says, that law, that constitution, that amendment, we agree to it. Basically, the state agrees to be governed or ruled by the document. Our current government listed in the Constitution of the United States of America had to be ratified by at least 9 state conventions. And this is a way the states demonstrated that the new government had the consent of the governed. Remember, consent of the governed means ruled by the people. You can also think of it as I consent to be governed by, if you filled in that sentence. And so when you ratify something, it's basically a state saying, I consent, I agree to, I am willing to be ruled by, be governed by, be controlled by, have to follow this particular law or this particular constitution or this particular amendment. So the Federalists in this story were the supporters of the Constitution of the United States of America in its first form delivered to the states. So these were basically the people coming out of the convention and felt like they had the job to try to convince the states that, you know, this is a good thing. You should like what we did, follow it, be willing to ratify it. And so they felt that a strong central government would help provide protection for the states, maintain order, regulate trade, etc. And some of the main characters, the main Federalists, were John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, John Adams, and James Madison. So John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, John Adams, and James Madison. The Anti-Federalists were opponents of this new document, the Constitution of the United States of America. These were basically the people of the states or people involved in the states who had a first chance to look at it, and they didn't necessarily want to scrap the whole thing, you know, but they said it needs improvement. We need to, you know, fix some things, add some things, make it better, at the very least. And so they feared that a strong central government would get in the way of your liberties and your rights, so that somehow the government would be so powerful and so controlling that you wouldn't be able to have rights as an American citizen. And these members were George Mason and Patrick Henry. This was some of the prominent members. George Mason, Patrick Henry. So this debate in the states, the Federalists, they argued that we need this Constitution and a strong national government. And they basically said things like, you know, Shays' Rebellion, if you remember that from a past slideshow, showed us that, you know, if we don't have a national group, a national organization, it's hard to combat these rebellions, these problems that end up happening, because you guys don't want to help each other all that much. Troops were not being sent from other states to aid state governments. Other problems with the before government under the Articles that the Federalists argued that, you know, we need to fix the Articles. We need the strong national government. It's that the states under the Articles of Confederation were printing their own state currencies and enforcing their own trade taxes. So the state was basically saying, you know, if I'm shipping something from Massachusetts and I'm shipping it to South Carolina, when it crosses into New York, it has to pay a tax. When it crosses into Pennsylvania, it has to pay a tax. When it crosses into D.C., it has to pay a tax. When it crosses into Virginia, it has to pay a tax. That kind of thing. And it costs money to do this. So the country was not making money at all, really. Finally, the national government could not pay its debts by taxing the individual states. We had a lot of debt because of war, because of the American Revolutionary War. We had to pay our soldiers. We had to pay for the things we borrowed. But our national government had to have the approval of the state before the national government could tax the state. So the government had to have Virginia say, hey, I agree that you can take money from us, for the government to actually be able to take money from them. And what state is going to necessarily agree on its own when all the other states are not doing it to have money taken from it? I mean, very unlikely. So the Federalists said we can combat these problems of the Articles of Confederation by creating a strong national government. And they said that this government would provide protection for everybody, maintain order, regulate trade, guarantee the rights of citizens, ensure American debts were paid, and stable the American currency. Anti-Federalists, though, were worried about a clause in the Constitution called the Necessary and Proper Clause. And this clause says Congress has the power to make all laws necessary and proper to carry out its stated powers. And as you can tell, what is necessary? What is proper? It's hard to know the meaning of this. It's a vague phrase open to interpretation. So anti-federalists this could be open to abuse by the national government. Could Congress then say, okay, we're the national government, we need to do, control all the jails and control all the educational institutions. So if we do that, what's left for the states? And they worried that just because it's so vague, Congress could make up whatever meaning it wanted to and just take away from everything the states were already doing. Anti-Federalists also worried because the Constitution lacked a Bill of Rights. So this fear was that a strong national government would not respect the rights of individual citizens. And the Federalists counter-argued that the Bill of Rights was unnecessary because the Constitution already limited government powers. The Federalists were arguing that, the Constitution sort of made the national government small in the first place. So why worry about, the national government being some big-eyed, green-haired monster, stamping down the rights of individual citizens? But this fear of the Anti-Federalists actually led the Federalists to propose a Bill of Rights in the final version of the Constitution. That's an example of the Bill of Rights. So you can think of the Federalist Papers as the Federalists trying to drum up support for the Constitution of the United States of America. So they were arguing against the Anti-Federalists in these papers about, the lack of a Bill of Rights. They were saying it's not needed. They were arguing against the Anti-Federalists about the Necessary and Proper Clause. They were saying don't worry about it. They were trying to assuage or reduce the fears that other people had when they looked at this document. And the Federalist Papers included people like Alexander Hamilton and James Madison. And Hamilton argued that there was danger towards not having a national government. He was trying to persuade people to accept the national government and the Constitution because he was saying, you're going to be very sorry if you don't. There's a lot of problems if you don't. Furthermore, James Madison argued that a national government could protect the rights of every citizen, that no one state would finally be able to ignore the rights of other states. So Massachusetts couldn't ignore the rights of Virginians who were residing in Massachusetts at that time. There's also fear of Spain and France that was driving this Constitution. If and these Federalist Papers. If we don't accept the Constitution, Spain and France are still on our land. They could take us over. They're powerful enough. We need to unite under a common Constitution. So the conclusion of the story is that the Constitution was eventually ratified by all 13 states. The Federalists proposed a Bill of Rights as an addition to the Constitution to win many people over. And what also helped to win many people over was the support of George Washington and Ben Franklin.